I've heard it recommended by some Catholics that couples should have a short dating and engagement so that they won't fall into sexual sin before their marriage. This point of view doesn't sit well with me.
Our YouTube viewers just saw the rolling of my eyes.
You're going to struggle with chastity in marriage as well, and the time before marriage is a training ground for chastity within marriage. I do not want to be married to someone because I couldn't control myself beforehand. What are your thoughts on this?
Carly, you and I are really on the same page here in being somewhat disturbed by some of the underlying premises of that very thought. Mm-hmm. And here, without attempting to say, I know what everybody thinks when they're thinking that, I'll put that aside. I don't claim to know. I know what everybody thinks. If they're thinking you should have a short engagement. But I do know that sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, that idea is motivated, as she said, by this idea, shorter engagement, then not as much temptation to unchastity. She's exactly right that there's no magic trick on your wedding day that suddenly makes what you're going to do that night chaste. If you were not chaste before you got married, you're not suddenly chaste when you get married, right? So let's look at this virtue of chastity. And in looking at it, I hope we will recognize why there's no magic trick that suddenly makes you chaste. What's really going on here is a legalistic understanding of morality, right? The day before you get married, it's illegal, right? Now you're married, now it's legal. That is a problem. That is a problem. What we're all called to, what every human being is called to, whether you are married, single, consecrated, celibate, every human being is called to the virtue of chastity. And chastity is the virtue that orders our sexual desires towards upholding the true dignity of every human person, right? So what does that look like for premarital chastity? Here's what it doesn't look like. Let me just put it that way first. Oftentimes you get this notion, and it's inherent in this question, that, in order to stay chaste before you get married, you better never be alone together, because you know what's going to happen if you're alone together. Okay, I'm all for recognizing your weaknesses and taking proper steps so that you're not putting yourself in a situation where you just fall into your weaknesses. I applaud you, high five, absolutely. But don't call that chastity. That actually demonstrates your lack of chastity, because it demonstrates that you are overwhelmed by the inclination to follow a desire that would not uphold the dignity of the other. And that is precisely the lack of chastity. And in that mindset, you get this idea, here, you chain yourself to this tree, and I'll chain myself to this tree so we can't get at one another, and we don't fall into, quote, unchastity. Well, the unchastity is already present in your disposition towards each other and your sexual desires. And I'm not saying that to scold anybody. I mean, that's the human reality of our fallen nature. But what's the danger of this mentality of you chain yourself to that tree, I'll chain myself to this tree until we get married? Well, what's the wedding night going to be for that couple? Oh, now we're, quote, allowed to cut the chains loose. Cut.
Oh, dear. That was beautiful. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, let's do that again tomorrow. Is this, if you put it this way, if the only thing that kept you from having sex before you got married was the fact that you didn't have the opportunity to have sex before you got married, you are not chaste. This is not chastity. This is not the freedom for which Christ has set us free. This couple is in chains. And again, with due reverence for each person's journey, and again, I'll say it just so people don't accuse me of thinking otherwise. I applaud those who, realizing their weaknesses, arrange their lives so that they're not alone together for extended times. But if you are truly chaste, in other words, if you're sexual desires have reached a point of redemption, not that any of us is ever perfect in this life, but if your desires have reached a point where you are relatively free from the domination of lust and able by God's grace to direct your desires towards upholding the good of the other, then an unmarried couple could be alone for as long as they wanted to and not fall into sin because they're free. They're not being dominated by unruly desires. The real danger, again, I'll say it, of believing otherwise, that you can't control yourself, is that you will think getting married justifies lack of self-control. And she's exactly right that chastity is integral to marriage itself,
Right.
and that premarital dating is meant to be a training ground for growing in chastity.
Yeah.
So I applaud her for her perspective there. I fully agree with it.
I feel all the things that she's saying, she's kind of getting at something that feels off in that, as you said, the premise of the advice. And I know, as you commented, we don't know the thoughts of every couple or every person giving advice. There's a lot, I feel like, of kind of subtle differences that are hard to parse out in individual couples' approach. And I can imagine a couple choosing to avoid those situations, even if they have that ethos that you mentioned of an chastity being their hearts ordered toward their sexual desires ordered to the good of the other, even if they have no doubt that were they in this situation or that situation, that they would choose to honor, that person in their behavior. That they
Can I add something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So let me tell me if this is an example of what you're getting at. That there's propriety,
Sure.
even if, for example, you knew you could live in the same house and remain chaste. It's not a good idea before you're married to be living in the same house for any number of reasons, not the least of which is the message you're sending to others.
Yes.
Are you getting, is that something as
that's
to what you're getting?
That's definitely in there.
Yeah.
And yes, so I just want to kind of give room to couples hearing our answer to look at just the wide range of different experiences that people have, that there could be a certain prudence in this advice, but it's could be a sign of just a lack of a vision for what the dignity of a man and a woman is, even if they're young people deeply in love and excited to be married. Maybe people are just really lacking in that fuller vision. And that in that lack, when you don't know what you don't have, this can feel like prudence and
when you're saying this, I'm remembering what the this is not being engaged for
a long
really
time.
long. I totally forgot that was the premise of the question. I latched on to that whole what is chastity thing. But yeah, there are plenty of good reasons. Forgive me for jumping in here, Wendy,
That's
but I'm
all
just
right.
remembering I had forgotten.
Yeah.
I'm remembering I had forgotten. That's an interesting phrase. Now I've forgotten what I remembered. I forgot.
That it was about the length of an engagement.
The whole point of this question was the length of there could be any number of good reasons not to have a long engagement. I just want to hear people. I want people to hear me saying that.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that I would think that you would not want to have a super long engagement if you were desiring the marital embrace, and there's no reason. I mean, why would you want to wait longer than, the normal?
So many circumstances go into those decisions, I guess, is kind of where all of my feedback is going, is that honoring of the circumstances of all kinds of details in our lives that impact that. But I think the thing that Carly was reacting to is that feeling of just not recognizing we're meant to be growing in our maturity in our relating during engagement, and not, as you described, just chaining ourselves
Right, right.
until we can finally, that legalism that
Yes,
you
yes.
pointed out. So, I hope what people take away from this is a sense of a deeper calling on that journey of dating and engagement to grow, and
Yeah.
yes, to honor the goodness of our desire for one another. It is good. It is God-given. It is affected by sin. All of those things are true. And we're needing to be prayerful and honest and open to grace and growth and conversation and all those things that lead us to be more prepared to love one another as husband and wife. And we're going to be on a journey of doing that after
For the rest
marriage.
of our lives.
Yeah. So I think there's just a good kind of sensitivity that Carly has. And also I just feel like a need for balance of just honoring people are on a different journeys, that they need to, have that space to be true to themselves, but be
and
maturing.
Be Christian, know thyself is great advice. Like we have to have the freedom to which Christ calls us, held out to us.
Yeah.
But not to use as some whip to beat ourselves up if we're not there, because none of us are there. We're on this journey towards that freedom. And wherever you are on that journey, you can know that you are loved there. And love is what compels us to continue on that journey towards a more and more full and more mature freedom. And I love this line from Love and Responsibility by JP2. He says, what is required for marriage is that you be mature enough to continue maturing.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Mature enough to... You and I were so immature.
And we didn't know it.
And we didn't know it when we got married, but we were mature enough to continue maturing.
And so any
At
couple...
least you were.
Come on.
You were more mature than I was. There's no
think
doubt
so.
about that. Anyway.
Well, any couple, say you did have a short engagement for this reason, for, this out of this mindset, and you're hearing this question answered,
Right.
and it's kind of calling into question what was the, mindset that you had going into marriage, and does this sort of shed some light on some early marriage experiences?
Yeah.
All of that is okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. The Lord loves us there. He's wanting that light to shine, not to,
Condemn or scold or make you
no,
question everything.
We don't have to hide.
Yeah.
We can just open that up and say, Lord, here we are.
Yeah.
Pour in the grace. We want to be more chaste now.
Yeah.
Like we want to have a deeper self-possession and desire for the good of the other now. Let's go. Let's grow in that.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click like and subscribe, and please leave a comment. If you'd like to learn more about the theology of the body, click on the link TOB for free. We will send you 3 free sessions to our introductory course. You can also learn about our patron community and become part of a global community of men and women who are learning, living, and sharing this vision. And hey, check out our events calendar. We might be coming to an area near you very soon.